The NFL is terrified of this new dynamic duo in Dallas with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, who just a couple days into training camp are giving Cowboys fans something to be really excited for in this upcoming season. We'll give you all the latest right here on Cowboys Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to tune into today's show. I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. We are less than 70 subscribers away from 4,500 people. I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens have been talked about the entire offseason as a new dynamic duo in the wide receiver room. But up until training camp, we didn't exactly know how that was going to work. We obviously know George Pickens had some attitude issues in Pittsburgh, but it seems we're seeing him in a different light. From things that Dak said to things that CD said, this team seems as though that George Pickens is a very different guy from what he was in Pittsburgh. But we're going to start with CeeDee Lamb's comments because he basically said the league better watch out because when he and Dak are healthy together, this team is good. And when you add George Pickens to that equation, this team is great. We go to the first quote here from CeeDee Lamb on this season in which he says, quote, "I feel like the league knows what happens when I'm healthy and I have Dak for a whole season. But if you don't, I will happily show you what it's going to be like this year. Honestly, I'm a dominant receiver. I don't like to speak highly of myself, but I can't wait to show you guys," end quote. And the best thing about this is that CeeDee Lamb has always shown this bravado and confidence with the way he talks and really his actions on the field. But now he has George Pickens to kind of, I'm going to say, take some weight off his shoulders. We know what CeeDee Lamb can do with under routes and using the ball to his advantage when he gets it in his hands. And that's where we go to our first training camp video here. There's a celebration at the end that I'm going to show in just a second, but you can see CeeDee Lamb. This is just a wide receiver screen to the right in which he turns it around for a 50-plus yard touchdown. And guess who's right out front blocking? George Pickens. Tell me you would have seen that any time when he was in Pittsburgh. And now the best part, the celebration that was debuted by CD and George Pickens, an absolute baller celebration. Let's get another close look at this celebration. This is a fantastic one. I'm excited to see it at AT&T Stadium because, man, they bring the NBA celebrations to NBA. We're going to have a fun time with these two. And once again, I want to point out, people talked a lot about George Pickens and his attitude issues and the problems that we saw with him in Pittsburgh. It seems that has gone by the wayside. Now, it's just training camp, I understand, but it seems that the transition from Pittsburgh to Dallas may have transitioned George Pickens into, I'm going to say it, a more mature person, player, wide receiver, and all of the sorts. Now, CeeDee Lamb is a big part of this because we know that CeeDee Lamb has always carried himself with a confidence and knows exactly what he is and how he can help this team. He had some more comments kind of talking about how he sees this wide receiver room and this Cowboys team stack up against the rest of the NFL. And he said this, quote, "I like us versus anybody. We'll see y'all in September," end quote. And boy, oh boy, do they have a way to shock the NFL right out of the gates. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles were the Super Bowl champions. We all know that. You can say what you think about them, whatever. They're Super Bowl champions, so that is why that first game matters. And it's going to be opening night. All eyes are going to be on Dallas. They have a new head coach. They have a new wide receiver. I would honestly say the confidence in Dallas is higher than it's been in the past 3 to 4 seasons in this team. And so you can go out there and prove it night one by taking on a Philadelphia Eagles team. And honestly, you don't even have to win that game, but just playing with a confidence, with a bravado, with a way to show that you are going to be legit this season. Or you can go out there and lose by 20, like we have seen in past opening days for the Dallas Cowboys, and it goes away. So that's a big thing that I'm liking the way that George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb have kind of made this team into a little bit more of a exciting nature for this season. Now, I do want to start with CeeDee Lamb because he said it best. When he is fully healthy and when Dak is there his entire season, we know this guy is a 1,500-yard player when he can do that. Even last season, he didn't have Dak for the entire year. 15 games, had 152 targets, 101 of those receptions, and yet 1,200-plus yards on 11.8 yards per reception. He is going to be a dynamic playmaker. And the one thing that I think is very interesting about this stat line and something that almost, to me, makes me believe he's going to have an even better season, You look down there, the longest rush he had. He had a rush last year for 65 yards. And the way that we've talked about Brian Schottenheimer, if you missed yesterday's video, we know that Schottenheimer is going to run this team in an interesting way. There's going to be multiple looks. There's going to be under center looks, shotgun, pistol, some wildcat. It's going to be difficult to defend this Cowboys team. And so, with the different looks, with the way that Schottenheimer is going to disguise this offense, it's going to make CeeDee Lamb even more hard to cover when we already know he is one of the hardest wide receivers to cover because he just needs a little bit of space. Literally, I'm going back to this play because, again, this is a wide receiver screen in which he turns around for a 50-plus yard gain and a touchdown, breaking ankles of his own teammate. And again, at the very end, you see George Pickens getting out there in front to block. I don't know what Schottenheimer has done, and I know that when he was tired, it was a bit of a questionable move, but I honestly think this may have been the right one because the vibes, the atmosphere, the leadership, and the team, like unity, I don't think has been higher for the Dallas Cowboys, or at least, again, it's training camp, but even when we go back to last training camp, the training before, things like this just weren't happening. You weren't seeing the camaraderie as much as we are seeing in this year. Maybe that's because of the injuries last year and kind of the not the need, but the want to show that they are better than what they were last year and that the injuries were the reason of that happening. So I'm excited for it. And I think, again, the undervaluement of CeeDee Lamb almost being like a mentor. I know that they're really close in age, but CeeDee has been in this league, knows how to perform in Dallas in a high stress environment. I mean, I'll say it, I put a lot of stress, we as fans put a lot of stress on these guys to want them to succeed. And George Pickens, we saw in Pittsburgh, can kind of have his own way about it. But everybody at camp is calling George Pickens motivated. And as we see right here, that's a scary thing for the rest of the NFL. Now, a true lead-by-example mentor, CeeDee Lamb, could work wonders for Pickens. Look out for these two in 2025. And just kind of one more thing to look at. George Pickens was talking about his time in Pittsburgh versus his time in Dallas. And he straight up was asked, you were a deep ball threat in Pittsburgh. What about your full route potential here, and how can it be utilized in Dallas? And he said, I'm definitely excited to run better plays. Mike Tomlin, Pickens called his experience in Dallas a fresh start that he's been enjoying. Now, Mike Tomlin is not the offensive coordinator, and the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh was horrible, but it is something to note that he is already feeling that here in Dallas, the better plays are there for him. The different route combinations, the different formations that he's in, the way they're going to be able to disguise the offense with how much motion is being implemented is already showing up. And for George Pickens, that's an exciting thing. It's an exciting thing to see him come about because last year was a little bit of a down year. He was a deep ball threat, and that was really what about it. And, we know the quarterback issues that Pittsburgh had with Russell, whether you think about him good or not. 103 targets last year, 894 yards, 15.3 yards per reception. This guy is a very good receiver. And I really, really think that he is in line for a career year, especially when you continue to look at training camp clips and you see Dak Prescott immediately throwing bombs to him. Reaching out, being able to outstretch those arms, it's an incredible thing to watch George Pickens work, especially when you see him to his full potential. And so with that being said, I have to ask you a question. How many combined yards do we see CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens getting this season? I've seen some people on Twitter say 3,000 to 4,000, like 3,000 combined yards is what we're expecting. We're expecting each of these guys to be 1,500-yard receivers. I'm curious. Let me know down in the comments section. I would have to say that I'm honestly expecting a 3,000-yard season from these two combined, especially when you talk about the camaraderie and the way that teams are going to have to scheme their defense around this. It's going to be hard, and that's the last thing we go to here. CeeDee Lamb talking about George Pickens saying, quote, I'm glad he's here. He knows I love him. I tell him every day that I'm happy for him. I hope we go together for X amount of years. I don't care. I just know we're not fitting to do this for only one, end quote. And I leave you with that. Only one. CeeDee Lamb is already putting it out in the world. he believes that this George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb dynamic duo is not a one-hit wonder. It's going to be a thing for the years to come. We're excited to see it, and we're happy to bring you along with it. Again, if you made it to the end of the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're covering the Dallas Cowboys every single day of the year. And with training camp here, there is news on news on news on news. So we appreciate you as always, and we'll see you next time here on Cowboys Digest. Peace out, everybody.